Food is fuel for your body, your mind, and definitely your sport. But let's face it, nutrition is confusing, and the expectations on girls and women to be thin and have a six-pack are exhausting. If you've ever been frustrated with your body, confused about nutrition, obsessed with eating healthy, or guilty when you don't, underate, overate, or overtrained, and overwhelmed with all the pressure, then this podcast is for you. Nutrition can be easy. You can take control of it, but it might start with letting go of control by asking for help and making a change. I'm Lindsay Elizabeth Cortez, sports dietitian and owner of Rise Up Nutrition, where I empower female athletes to overcome nutrition concerns and perform at their highest level, to stop being confused by all the mixed or harmful messages, and finally have confidence in your body as a fierce, fit, and fueled female athlete. This podcast is brought to you by our wonderful partners, Prevenix, Inside Tracker, Orgain, Practice Better, and Jen and Carrie. Stay tuned to hear more about these amazing companies that I am partnered with, and check out our show notes for discounts and deals. But for now, let's get right to the conversation. Hello, listeners and fans. Lindsay Elizabeth Cortez, your host of the podcast. I'm here today with Lauren Ammon. She is the founder and head coach of Performance Reimagined. At the age of 5, Lauren was literally thrown into a pool so she would have something to do at her sister's swim meets. 17 years later, with a high school state championship and a top 3 finish in the Mid-American Conference, she said goodbye to being a successful swimmer. This foundation as a student athlete set the tone for high achievement in the professional world. After 15 years in HR, Lauren received her professional coaching certification from the Institute of Professional Excellence in Coaching to feed her passion for supporting others in reaching their full potential. She started her business focused on leadership development and career advancement. But while watching the 2020 Olympic Games, it all changed for Lauren. As she watched Simone Biles remove herself from competition and Katie Ledecky do everything in her power to hide her disappointment following a lackluster race, she knew who she was called to serve: athletes. It was validated when Michael Phelps told the world, "Competition is overwhelming. We just want someone to listen to us, someone to support us mentally through the pressure-filled moments." Lauren specializes in working with student athletes to master the mental part of the game. Her company, Performance Reimagined, exists to show athletes there is an outlet to be heard, seen, and supported mentally and emotionally at the same level they are physically. Lauren, thank you for coming on the show, and I'm sure we're going to give our listeners a lot of insight to this mental resiliency and performance today. So welcome.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I love talking everything related to athletes, from mind, body, spirit, and everything in between.
Amazing. Your bio really shared with us already. I think, that you're a swimmer. You had a lot of passion for it. Obviously the work that you do working with athletes, but let's expand a little bit on that swimming journey for you. I mean, you were thrown into a pool. Cool. At what point in time did you know this was something that you actually enjoyed and maybe also that you were actually really good at?
Yeah. It's one of those instances where I didn't see it coming, for lack of a better term. I'm 40 now. What I remember is always being in love with the sport, right? It was just something that was natural to me, something that I just gravitated towards. And I just remember being younger, I did find kind of a natural affinity for it versus something like basketball or volleyball or soccer or anything like that.
Yeah.
I just loved being in the water. It was peaceful. I wouldn't have said that when I was 6 years old by any means, but looking back on it, it was peaceful. It was just, it just felt like home, right? It was just that innate intuitive feeling of this is where I was meant to be. And I just loved it. I loved the laughter with my teammates. I loved being challenged by coaches. I loved challenging myself every single day to see what I was capable of. And just quite honestly, I never wanted to leave, but such is life, and every athlete must move on.
Yeah. I mean, and so you did high school state championships and swam in college.
Mm-hmm. So I started, so my mom threw me in when I was 5. And then a year later, my sisters and I tried out for a team here in Cincinnati, and we all three made it. So from the age of 6 until I graduated from high school, I swam for the same club team year round from, let's say, August or September, depending on how young or how old I was, until like the next August or September. I mean, there was only like a couple weeks break when you get into kind of full year round swimming. But at the same time, I swam for my high school when I was of high school age, right? So I was swimming for 2 teams at the same time. And then when I went to college, so I swam from literally the age of 6 year round until 22.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I read somewhere on your website, maybe, and this might have to do with the work you do now, but some of the mental struggles and pressures you felt as a competitive swimmer. When did that come on? Because of course, when we're young, sports are just fun and enjoyable, but there is sometimes this turning point where it should always be fun, but competitiveness is also something that I think adds value to our life. And when we kind of recognize the thrill of winning and we want that, but then there's also that turn where sometimes that's where the pressure builds up as well.
Yeah.
When did you start experiencing that?
As I look back on my career, where I think it really changed was when puberty hit, right? And part of that is because, when you're younger, you hit the nail on the head. When you're younger as an athlete, like you just go out and you do whatever you need to do. And you rarely, if ever, consciously feel like you're tired. You just keep going and keep going. And things somewhat, quote unquote, come somewhat naturally. Yeah. And I do remember that, like, when I went into high school, which is right around kind of when I hit puberty, and as I got older, it was like, this isn't as easy as it once was, right? It became more challenging to find that next level, particularly for female athletes, right? You hit that age of puberty and in 11 and 12, you're still just as fast or just as good, if not better than the boys. And then boom, we all go through the change. They skyrocket because their testosterone kicks in. Mm-hmm. And then we're kind of left with figuring out, how do I make all of this work with all these new things kind of going on in my body, right? And you're not necessarily really conscious of that.
And this is actually, because it's so difficult during this time, this is actually when we see our highest dropout rates for female athletes is, basically a lot of girls will do recreational youth sports, and then we kind of hit puberty and high school, and there's this huge decline because it's a struggle. And this is definitely, I talk about this a ton on my podcast of just bringing awareness, kind of normalizing. We know it's a struggle, but this is also a normal struggle. And if you can just ride the wave, like, things get better on the other side.
Yes. And I think I attribute that too to a great support system. But at the same time, for me, I was so in love with the sport. I didn't know what else I was going to do with my life if I didn't do that. But that's where kind of the mental trash is when I became much more conscious of it, was like, this isn't as easy anymore. And not to say that like everything came easy to me and I never had challenges, but it was just a different kind of struggle. And that's when all the doubt and the insecurity kicks in. And I didn't know how to process or handle it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's when it became like, I'm still a perfectionist. I still want to do the best, but doing my best seems to be harder and harder every single, even as I got older, right, from year to year. Mm-hmm. And that was the biggest struggle.
At that time in your journey, did you have any resources or tools, or did you really just kind of hang in there?
I really just kind of hung in there because, I grew up with, I think I did the count one time. I think I've had 50 coaches in my lifetime.
Wow.
Right?
That's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, just between all the teams I was on and how often they turned over, most of them, 95 to 98% of them are male, right? And this is the late 90s, early 2000s. And by no means am I disparaging male coaches, because I had phenomenal coaches. But at the time, in that time frame, it was, you're fine.
Yeah.
Just suck it up. Just get over it. Right?
Yeah.
And the resource was more or less like leaning in my parents to say, like, how do I get past this? What does this really look like? But neither of my parents were athletes. Neither of my parents can swim. And so while that can be a huge blessing, and that was a huge blessing for us, that was probably the biggest downfall, was that I didn't necessarily feel like I had a ton of resources to turn to to figure out how to do it, right? I knew I needed to get out of my own head. I just didn't know how. I didn't know how to think differently. And sports psychologists were certainly around in the late 90s, early 2000s. They weren't necessarily a resource on my club team or in high school, but certainly when I went to college, the only time they were brought in, though, for us specifically was when we were having some team dynamic troubles. I mean, this is what, like 18 to 22-year-old females, not necessarily knowing how to get along. That's when they brought them in. They were never really offered as, hey, if you're struggling with your performance, go talk to the sports psychologist, right? And I wasn't aware enough at the time to be like, oh, that's a resource that I can try. Right. Because at the same time, it was always, I felt so alone and I felt I was the only one struggling with it. And by no means did I want to call attention to myself that I didn't have all of my stuff together and I needed somebody else to talk to.
Oh, and you just said that so perfectly of the, I think, stigma is associated with when we're struggling mentally is it feels like this is my problem. I need to figure this out. And especially when you add on to that, I think you already mentioned, you had that perfectionist mentality. It's like, I can just really resonate with you and that pressure you put on yourself to, this is my problem. I need to fix it. I need to figure this out. And then if the resources weren't literally like pushed upon you, you weren't going to go out of your way to seek them.
Yeah. And that's the blessing and the curse of the athlete mindset, right? There's that level of personal responsibility that most athletes take on. Like I'm responsible for my own performance. I've got to be able to, I'm the one who has to put in the hard work to get what I want. And so then that like translates to the mental side of the game. And when you don't know what resources are available or that resources even really exist to support you in that respect, that mindset can turn you over. Like, this is my problem. I've got to figure this out. No one else can help me in this respect. And that really powerful mindset that can work wonderfully in some instances becomes I hate to use the word weakness, but the overused strength of, oh, well, this is my problem and no one else can help me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even you said the phrase earlier, like in your own head, and I want to dive into that with you because that I can see in two ways. One, we do get stuck in our own heads. But I also think kind of continuing this conversation here, it can sometimes other people will just say that to you, like, oh, you're stuck in your own head. Like, oh, get out of your own head. And that just contributes more to that. Like, this is my own problem. I'm in my own head issue. It's something nobody else can help me with. It's my head, So that phrase itself, I'd love to hear your explanation of what that means and how we can get out of our own head. But also I think sometimes that phrase itself can contribute to the problem even more.
Absolutely. And for me, the idea of being stuck in your own head, it's like being a prisoner of your own mental anguish, right? Oftentimes at Performance Reimagined, we talk about the concept of your inner opponent, right? That voice in your head, that's the one that raises the doubt, the fear, the worry, the anxiety, because it's the voice that says to you, oh my gosh, if I don't perform the way I want, what does that mean about me as a person? What does that mean about my position on the team? What does that mean about how my parents will look at me? What does that mean about how my coach, how my teammates will view me? That's how I define being in your own head. And that's what we really talk about at Performance Reimagined, is to create this concept that it's that voice in your head that when you're feeling uncomfortable or when you're feeling scared or you're feeling you don't know what's going to happen, it's that voice that tells you, whoa, wait a minute. Are you sure you really want to do this? Mm-hmm. Are you sure you want to put yourself out there? Are you sure you want to even try? Because if you do and you don't get what you want, what's going to happen? Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right. I think there's then it's that internal anguish that you're going through. And then someone just validates it back to you, right? It's that when you're just in your own head and then you're like, oh my God, I am. And my God, I'm the only one who goes through this, or, I'm the only one who doesn't know how to do this. And God, I am in my own head. And God, I'm such a terrible person because I don't know how to get out. And, I think it becomes this catch-all of Yeah. I mean, and that's what I received. It's like, yeah, you're just in your own head. I'm like, I know I am. I just don't know how to do anything about it. Right. And when you hear that from someone else, it's like your worst fear being recognized. You're like, oh, they do know I'm in my own head. Someone else does see it. And if they see that, what else can they see? What else do they know about me that maybe I don't want to face or see about myself, right? It's kind of the same concept when you get older in that idea of imposter syndrome. Like it's the same source, right? It's that voice in your head. We just call it your inner opponent that's trying to convince you that what you're doing is either wrong or you're not good enough or you're not worthy to have it.
Fans, I hope you are enjoying the conversation. We are going to take a quick pause so I can tell you about our partners. They are so valuable in providing you with amazing products and helping keep this podcast going. First, Prevenix. Thanks to their incredible Joint Health Plus product, my aches and pains from running and honestly being a new mom, as crazy as that sounds, have literally disappeared. As I continue to push my body physically as an athlete, and frankly, as I continue to age, I was shocked at the aches I was beginning to feel in my knees, wrists, ankles. It seemed like omega-3s, curcumin, nothing was really working, but after just 1 month of Joint Health Plus from Prevenix, I felt a drastic improvement. Honestly, this is something I rarely experience with supplements, but Prevenix uses quality ingredients backed by sound science. Their products are pharmaceutical grade with extensive testing for safety, quality, and purity. They offer other supplements, including probiotics, omega, immune health, and a multivitamin, which I also use daily. And the science behind their multi has changed my opinion on multivitamins altogether. I used to never recommend them or take them myself, and now I recommend and take Prevenix Multivitamin, Mineral, and Antioxidant Plus daily. I am so impressed with Prevenix, and I can't wait for you to try. You can get 15% off your first order using the code RISEUP at checkout. The company also offers 100% money-back guarantee within 30 days because they stand by their products. And so do I. Head to Prevenix.com, Previnex.com, and use the code RISEUP, one word, at checkout for 15% off. Thanks to Inside Tracker, I can get insights and feedback on my blood biomarkers whenever I want to. No more waiting for doctor's visits and them telling you you're fine. Instead, you are in control of your health with Inside Tracker. For 20% off any of their products, blood biomarker testing, DNA kit, inner age, head to InsideTracker.com and use the code RISEUP. Take your health into your own hands. For nutritional shakes and bars to fuel your body, head to Orgain.com and use the code RISEUP30 for 30% off your first order. Orgain's ready-to-drink nutritional shakes are my go-to to throw in my bag when I'm heading to the gym or to a trail to run, so that when I'm done, I've got a recovery option to refuel and rehydrate with right away. Orgain makes nutrition and sports nutrition that works. For repeat customers, check the show notes for more. And again, first-time customers, head to Orgain.com and use the code RISEUP30, all caps. Health, wellness, and fitness coaches, listen up. Practice Better is the all-in-one platform that I use to manage my business and my clients. From client scheduling and messaging, hosting sessions, taking notes, creating modules, invoicing, telehealth, building reports, and more, Practice Better is the better way to manage your practice as a nutrition or health or fitness coach. Look no further. Use the link in our show notes and use the code RISEUP20 for 20% off your first 4 months plus a 14-day free trial. I've been using Practice Better since the inception of my business, Rise Up Nutrition, and I couldn't be happier. Again, the code is RISEUP20, all caps. Use the link in our show notes for 20% off your first 4 months and a 14-day free trial. And last, ladies, moms, every mom is an athlete. That's why Jen and Carrie have designed the best nursing and pumping sports bras. I cannot rave about these enough. I hate that most maternity bras have clips and don't support being active, but Jen and Carrie get that because they're moms and athletes themselves. They want you to be a mom and an athlete. So their stylish and athletic high-impact bras allow you to crush your workout and then feed your baby with comfort and style. They have saved me during this time of my life, keeping up with sport and momming. Please go check them out at jenandcarrie.com and use the code RISEUP10 for $10 off your order. You won't regret it. Again, jenandcarrie.com, rise up, all caps, RISEUP10 for $10 off. Let's get back to the episode. So, and obviously this is what your work does, and giving 3 quick tips will not cover everything, but I'm wondering if you could give our listeners a few tips or just like simple places we might start in order to get out of our own head, in order to combat that inner opponent. Where are some places that we should start?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, like the biggest tip is, and what we always talk about with the athletes, is you're not alone, right? Every athlete, regardless of level, regardless of sport, regardless of talent, is plagued by this inner opponent. And while in those moments you feel like you're the only one going through it, you're not. Mm-hmm. That's tip number 1. 2, going through it is normal, right? It's part of the human experience. And part of that is really driven by this balance that we as humans don't necessarily always know we're trying to create. And it's the balance of standing out as an individual, particularly as an athlete, to be recognized for your talent, to win the awards, to get the outcomes, to get the accolades, but also being a part of the team, being a part of the bigger whole, right? It's like we want to stand out and be recognized, but we don't want to stand out too much and put ourselves out there and create this idea that 1, we don't know what we're doing, and 2, we don't know how to get ourselves out of it. Mm-hmm. So it's like those 2 things combined. 1, just providing yourself grace that you're not alone. And that 2, it's normal what you're going through. Mm-hmm. That doesn't necessarily make it any easier. But even when we're having conversations with athletes, you can literally physically see the relief when we have this conversation of, oh, okay, someone knows what I'm going through. Someone at least can support me. They know that I have all these fears and anxieties inside of me, and they see me for a human. Mm-hmm. And then once, recognizing you're not alone, recognizing that what you're going through is normal, and just having awareness that that inner opponent exists. And one of the things that we often talk about with the athletes, and very early on, is the idea that that inner opponent is not you, right? We take on that voice and we're like, oh my gosh, I am terrible. I don't know what I'm doing. I can't figure this out. And that inner opponent is not you. It's not it feels a part of you because it's so loud and it's so ingrained in your life. But really it's this, we're going to get a little ethereal here and a little woo-woo, but it's this protective persona that you and every other human on this planet has created to actually keep us from the things that our brain perceives as dangerous.
Yes. Yes. I think, whether our listeners right now and hearing some of the other conversations we've had with some other psychologists or mental health coaches, or even in my space, like in the nutrition realm and eating disorder specialists, we talk about this a lot. We recently had last month on a psychotherapist, Carrie, who talked about some intrusive thoughts and like obsessive compulsive thoughts and kind of thoughts that bring up anxiety. And that sometimes stems from this place of this part of you that's trying to protect you from the scary, from the negative, from the harmful. The problem is when those thoughts that are trying to protect you then overtake you. Now they're actually hurting you. And another, parallel in the space of disordered eating and eating disorder, very often people, including athletes, will feel like, well, I've got 2 voices in my head, one telling me I want to eat the cake and one telling me don't eat the cake is bad for you, and it's 2 different voices, and it's which one is trying to protect me and which one's, overtaking me now that now I'm afraid of all sugar. Now I can't even enjoy, this treat on my birthday, and this has really taken over my life now. And I think now drawing that parallel to exactly what you're saying, the inner opponent is, okay, well, Some of that is that inner opponent trying to challenge you, oppose you. Maybe some level of that is good and healthy, but when it takes over and it's now making you feel not worthy or weak or insecure, then you're getting on the starting line, not ready to compete, Mm-hmm. And so I think all these, it's like it's normalizing, right? Going back to what you said about normalizing this inner opponent voice. And you might have this inner opponent voice pop up in different areas of your life. Again, just like I was saying, maybe it's intrusive thoughts, maybe it's performance related, maybe it's eating related. So just recognize it and see, kind of getting to why is this here? Is like, what is it trying to protect me from? But is it actually protecting me, or is it now holding me back from being who I am? And sorry, I'm going on a tangent now, but as you were saying, it's not actually you. I think this is huge. Because if it were actually you would want the best for yourself. And when the inner opponent starts to take over, they don't want the best for you anymore. Mm-hmm. In specific to eating disorder recovery, people will even talk about ED, so eating disorder ED, and they name that voice Ed. They give it a name. They personify it. It's like, it's not Lindsay. It's Ed. It's not Lauren talking. It's Ed talking, Yes. And it's sometimes helpful to separate because it's like, that's not me. Okay. So now I get to choose. Do I want to listen to Ed or do I want to listen to me? And I can see that in the work that you do, Lauren, too, of like, okay, the inner opponent isn't me. So do I want to listen to me or do I want to listen to the inner opponent?
Mm-hmm. You hit the nail on the head, because that's the next step in the process, is personifying your inner opponent. And we often talk about, give it a name of someone you don't know, mm-hmm. even if there is a person who feeds into that inner opponent, right? Like we can all probably associate somebody we've met on this planet who feeds into that inner opponent. Mm-hmm. But fun fact, they didn't know it existed for you in that way. So anyway, giving it a name. And even going as far as like, is it male? Is it female? Is it neutral? Right? Just giving it as much detail as you possibly can, because that allows you to then create that separation fairly quickly, right? And to say, oh, no, mine's name is male. Maybe that comes from all the male coaches I've had. I don't know. And his name is Louie. I know no one named Louie, but the moment he pops up, it's like, okay, wait a minute. Ooh, let's take a 20 here, buddy. Mm-hmm. Like what's coming up? Why are you appearing right now versus maybe something else? That becomes really powerful, because it gives, especially an athlete in that quick time frame, like sometimes in the game, those thoughts start to come up and you can start to spiral out of control or feel like you're in this mental quicksand. It's a really simple, right? It takes a lot of work to get there, but it's a really simple way of, oh, no, Louie's here right now. Mm-hmm. I have an opportunity to switch what's going on. I now have a choice.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to get a little more woo-woo with you right now.
Yeah. Love it.
You said that your inner opponent is more masculine. You name him Louie. Mm-hmm. I have seen for myself and a bunch of my clients, I've seen the same thing, that their inner opponent or their Ed or whatever it might be is a very masculine identity. Like, listen, and I want to give our listeners this tip, because it's a great tip that you're suggesting, of like, listen to that voice. What does it sound like? What's the tone that they're talking? I know my inner voice gets very blunt, short, harsh sounding, and just more like manly sounding. And it's the words that they're saying too, that I say to, or the inner opponent says to me, is just this very like, get it done attitude. Like, get it done, work through it, like stay up late, push harder. Like it's not calm. It's not peaceful. It's not accepting. And I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm getting into more like masculine and feminine energies now, but it's almost like as a woman, I do feel like I actually am my best self when I tap into my more feminine energies. But like as an athlete and a competitive person, that inner opponent comes on strong with this very like masculine energy. And there's some level of that's like really helpful to me, of like, okay, I get shit done. Cool. But also like I hit burnout. I hit like, I'm not as nice to myself or other people. And so I don't know if I'm like going way off on this masculine and feminine energies thing, but it's just interesting to me that I agree with you. Like my inner opponent voice is also like more masculine. And yet like, I think that myself, Lindsay, I am my best self when I allow myself to tap into the more feminine.
I think we're living parallel lives.
Okay.
Because you hit exactly what, and I'll speak from my own personal experience, right? As an athlete and now as a coach working with athletes, is that I struggle with that masculine, feminine energy and finding the balance of when each side works. And I agree with you. I think there are times when that masculine energy, that drive, that push, that like, I'm going to get anything done at all costs. And I'm not trying to stereotype all men in that respect. No. But it happens, right? And then I've got that female energy that's, whoa, take a step back. Yeah. Feel into it. What does your intuition tell you versus any, sort of data or validation, right? And I think, and I'll say this, I think a lot of female athletes can struggle with that because there is that like very beautiful and powerful balance between them.
And I think it's because sport itself embraces more of the masculine energy qualities, right? Yeah. And yes, just to clarify, because we're using the term masculine and feminine, this does not mean male and female. So a male can have feminine qualities and masculine qualities. A female, we have both of them. It's kind of just like at what point in our lives or in which situations does one take over more than another? And I don't know, it's 2023. Maybe we need different terms for this anyways, but I don't have that yet.
Right.
I myself embody masculine energies. My husband embodies feminine energies. Sometimes it's fine, right? Like we can be all the things, but I think that sport itself, the structure, the discipline, the competitiveness, the hierarchy of placements, the data, those are things that quantify, that describe masculine energies versus feminine energies are typically like, intuition, compassion, patience. And that's just harder in sport.
Yeah. But it's true. Like if you boil it down to that, right? It's like I've thought about this before and I would love your thoughts on it too. It's like, it's the masculine energy that is required to get to this high performance.
Yeah.
Hear me out, right? And then it's the feminine energy that takes over. So in order to go through that performance. So a specific example, right? So you're pounding as an athlete in practice, hours upon hours upon hours, just grinding and grinding and grinding to get there. The moment you get to the big meet, the big moment, the big race, the big game, whatever the case may be, 9 times out of 10, ask any athlete and they'll ask you what they did or what their best performance was like. Mm-hmm. Most of them will say, I have no idea. Yeah, I was just like in the moment. I was just feeling whatever was happening.
Mm-hmm. They tuned in.
Yep. It just was.
To themselves. They let go of everything else. Yep. I completely agree with you. And this is again why I want to make it clear to our listeners. We're not saying one energy is better than the other. You need both and finding balance. And I definitely agree with you. I think I definitely agree with you of like the masculine energies get you to that point. And then we have to tune in, be intuitive, like trust in ourselves, relax. And that's where we can really, performance-wise, really succeed.
Yeah, because that's really where anxiety lives in between. Anxiety lives in between kind of that masculine energy and that feminine energy. And by that, I mean, anxiety is what creeps up in us when we're trying to control an outcome, when we are trying to grab hold of something, whether it's a performance, whether it's whatever, that we say, I want it to be this exact thing. Mm-hmm. Consciously knowing we can't control what actually happens. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think anxiety specifically for athletes really lives, is that we're trying to embody one energy. Maybe that's it. There's that imbalance of the energies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you're trying to like grab hold of it when really you can't do anything other than embrace what's happening and release yourself and trust as an athlete, we're using that to trust that you've put in everything you possibly can in order to get yourself where you want to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm so glad we went down that path. I wasn't necessarily expecting that out of this conversation, but I think that it's such a good tip for our listeners. Listen to your inner voice. And maybe it's the opposite. Maybe your inner voice is the more feminine, relaxed, and like maybe what you need to flip the script for you is to tune into the other, right? Like tune into the more masculine, like, but listen to that inner voice. What is it? Because it's not you. So who is it? What is it saying? And then you get the choice. Is this somebody I want to listen to or not?
Yeah. Because you hit the nail on the head is that that message, depending on the situation from your inner opponent, could be, the more effective path for you. Right. And that's what we really work on with athletes is to figure out what is the root of the message? What is it telling you? Because the message can change depending on the situation, and your emotional response is driven by the intensity of what a potential outcome could mean for you.
Mm-hmm. Hey fans, I hope you are enjoying this conversation so far, and we'll be back to it in just a moment. But first, I want to pause and let you know that this episode is brought to you by the Female Athlete System of Transformation, aka the Fast Track to overcome disordered eating and use food as fuel to perform at your highest level. The Female Athlete System of Transformation is my unique program and proven systems to guide female athletes to understanding and implementing the proper nutrition for their sport, life, and health. Myself and my team of registered sports dietitians work one-on-one with clients to address their unique needs and counsel them through the nutritional and behavioral changes needed. Many female athletes who resonate with disordered eating, mental guilt around food and body, relative energy deficiency in sport or female athlete triad, amenorrhea, repeat injuries due to negligent nutrition, or frankly, just a lack of knowledge and understanding on their fueling needs, have seen incredible success in the Fast Track. After years of working as a sports RD, I've compiled the most effective ways for female athletes to learn nutrition, be supported, be challenged, and ultimately find their success with fueling as fast as possible. So don't wait another day. Get to your goals faster by joining the Female Athlete System of Transformation. Look in the show notes or head to the website to book a free call and learn more. Okay, now let's get you back to the conversation. Enjoy. I'm also just thinking right now about that term inner opponent. I really like that too, because as athletes, we have opponents and we want opponents. It's not fun running a race by yourself or swimming a race by yourself. Like you want opponents, but do you want to be in competition every moment of your day? No, you don't. Maybe you want that opponent in your swim race, but you don't want the opponent, when you're sitting down for dinner later at night. And so I think that's another good thing to think about as you're listening to your inner opponent. It's like, wait, why are you here right now? Like, this isn't a race. This isn't a competition, whether it could be anything. Cause I think that inner opponent can creep into other areas of our life. And that's why it makes us feel unworthy. And it's like, maybe I don't need this opponent challenging me right now. There's certain times, certain situations where the challenge is welcomed or, might help you, might push you. And there's other times where it's like, I don't need this. And I think that as athletes, because we're innately competitive, suddenly we're competitive in every area of our life. And that's what makes us super stressed out. Like, why do I have to be the best at sport and at school and among my friends and, in my social group? And like, you don't have to be the best at everything. Mm-hmm. So maybe you can ask that inner opponent to please leave while I'm trying to eat dinner right now.
Yeah. And that was a huge aha for me as I got older, right? Is that idea of I was really competitive in an environment where I was pretty darn good. And I could compete. I could rise to the occasion. Even if that wasn't my event, I could still kind of hold my own in most, right? And then when I got older, that's what happened. It was like, well, I got to compete in everything. I got to show what I'm capable of in all these different arenas. And it wasn't until well into my 30s, I finally figured out, oh, yeah, I'm not good at everything, nor do I need to be good at everything. And then I actually reverted it back to my swimming career. As an athlete, I think we pull a lot from our athletic experiences. And for me specifically, and I think a lot of athletes, it's like, if I can see it through an athletic lens, it makes a lot of sense for me. Mm-hmm. So when I reverted back to, I could hold my own in most races, right? Depending on what it was. But I was a distance freestyler. Like, that's where I shined. That if you were like, you can swim 200 back, I'm like, oh, okay, I can swim 200 back today. But I didn't have to be good in that, right? I had the lane, literally and figuratively, that I swam in. Yeah. I didn't have to learn how to be good at those other things.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I made those connections in my older life, I was like, oh, there it is.
Yeah. Well, and I think that also, thank you for sharing that personal story, but it also brings up the challenges, the mental challenges that athletes face as they leave their competitive career. Because I think that I talk to so many athletes that are maybe 1 or 2 years or 5 years post graduation, post competitive competition, if they were a collegiate athlete or something. We're still trying to find that next thing. Okay. So if it's not swimming, am I going to do a triathlon? Am I going to do an Ironman? Like, what do I do as an adult now? Right. Which is great, because I am somebody who has continued to participate in sports and I enjoy being competitive with it post college. In fact, sometimes I say my best performances were both post college because of all the lessons and life lessons and nutrition and mindset lessons I've learned since then. But it gets difficult too, because we're always trying to grasp on to, staying competitive, or who am I, the struggle of who am I without sport is really difficult. Is that something that you work with in some of your clients and resources, is dealing not only with how do I stay mentally resilient and strong during sport, but also in life after sport?
Yeah. So we touch on that a little bit. We made the conscious decision as an organization to really focus on the student athlete, so the current active athlete. But having gone through my experience and then having had the opportunity to speak to so many retired athletes, right? It creeps up. And as I look back on my own experience, it crept up long before I even retired. So, a good instance of that is like, seniors who had the opportunity to go play in college or go compete in college, right? That creeps up. And, we can often talk about, well, what is it you want to study? I don't know. I haven't thought about that. I'm really just focused on getting into college and playing for the team and getting my scholarship.
Right.
And I remember that as a collegiate athlete, it was like, yes, I knew I was going to school to further, my education, but I wasn't necessarily really focused on that. It was like, I'll pick a major that I like and whatever. I'll just make sure that I get good enough grades so I can continue to swim. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until I graduated and what I had planned for myself was no longer part of the equation. That's where my life fell apart. When I graduated from college, I had hopes of going to law school. I didn't get into law school, which took me more than a decade to admit to the broad public. That's where my whole life felt like it came crumbling to a halt of, wait a minute. I've been a really successful athlete my entire life. How did I not just get into law school? I graduated with honors. I graduated with top grades. Like, I'm the biggest loser ever. I'm the only person this ever happened to. So knowing that, we do bring some of that into what we talk about with current athletes. And it often comes up actually naturally, not something that we as an organization are like prompting them, or as individual coaches are prompting them. It comes up naturally.
It just comes up. Yeah. I think too that dealing with you're in college, you're focusing on sports so much. It's like, we expect to succeed. You've expected to succeed, but it's like, well, we're going to succeed in the things that we put our energy and effort into. Right. And so if we're putting all of our energy and effort into a sport, which isn't wrong, it's not wrong to do that. But then we might not be the best or the most successful in these other areas, right? And it's not wrong to make that decision. It's just then not feeling like a failure afterwards and just saying, no, being proud that you put all your effort into swimming, being proud of that, and then figuring out, okay, now what's the next step? Where am I going to put my effort into now moving forward?
Yeah. And at 22, I wasn't conscious of that enough yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, the fear, the doubt, the shame, the guilt of that all crept in. And again, it goes back to, yes, I was surrounded by other athletes, obviously my teammates who I swam with in college, but no one was talking about this transition from athletic life to non-athletic life. Everyone, my perception or what I told myself was everyone else figured this out. Like, why in the world can't I do it? No one ever talked about it. It was like, and now in my, having started the organization and being so connected to being connected to so many former athletes, we all went through something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're all just now coming together and being like, yeah, it wasn't the easiest road.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think this is important for our current high school and college athletes to hear. Sometimes you might think us women who aren't maybe actively competing, we might not get it, but we do get it. We were once in your shoes. And in fact, we might even be able to help you with the what's to come 5 or 10 years from now and give you some of those life lessons that we didn't have at that time, kind of guide you a little bit more. So tell us, Lauren, a little bit about Performance Reimagined. You have, where you work with clients and teams, but you also have like online self-study courses. Tell us a little bit about how you can help current athletes with their mental game.
Yeah, we're super excited about what's rolling out in 2023. So, up to this point, we have been working one-on-one or much more intimate relationships with either individual athletes and or teams. And, one of the biggest challenges that has been communicated, just because it's a natural challenge, is that student athletes have a very busy schedule, right? They're waking up if you were like me, you swam in the morning, you went to school, you swam at night, you came home, you ate, you did your homework, and you
the swimmers are the craziest of all with their schedules. I just have to say it. Like the swimming schedules are just insane. You wake up at like 4 a.m. Like I don't understand the swim culture.
Yeah, we're a different breed of athlete, that's for sure. But so what I was thinking about my own experience, and then even talking with quote unquote modern student athletes, is creating what we call challenges.
Yeah.
They're 21 days long, and they're really focused on allowing student athletes to practice these mental training techniques for 10 to 15 minutes a day, whether it be through micro learning lessons or micro coaching lessons. Mm-hmm. And every challenge is fit with activities that athletes can incorporate into their day that don't take too much time, that allow it to become a habit, kind of that habit building. And create an opportunity for taking this big behemoth concept of mental training and breaking it down into simple tasks and activities for them to complete. And we're really excited because we launched our first challenge really focused on the inner opponent. So it's all about how you start tackling that inner opponent. And I always like to make the caveat that your inner opponent is going to be a lifelong competition. Right. Mm-hmm. But the younger that you can learn how to manage it and to get it to work for you, back to what we're talking about, it's like, how do you get that message to either work for you or be in a position where you can choose what message works for you? Mm-hmm. Just how powerful of a human you will be on the court, off the court. And as we were just talking about, as you get older and you get farther removed from the competitive arena, how you continue to use those techniques well into your life, regardless if it's sport related or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. I love the reality is that mindset training should be something every day. Another quote on your website is train your mind like you train your body. As an athlete, it's like, okay, I got to go to practice today, right? Or even on your rest or recovery day, it's still like, well, let me stretch. You've got that athlete mindset of I'm training my physical body. Well, what are you doing every day to train your mind? And so very often we see athletes that really aren't doing anything to train their mind. And then suddenly we have a problem. Mm-hmm. We have burnout. We have imposter syndrome. We're in our own head. Then we feel like we can't take it anymore and we're struggling. And look, get help then. That's great. But that's like the physical comparison is like neglecting your mobility work and then suddenly you have an injury. Well, now you're pulled from sport and you have to go see, a doctor and a trainer and things like that. And it's like, but what if we trained our mind like we trained our body and we put in a little bit of work every day? We spent, just like you spend 10 to 15 minutes to do your mobility work and stretch, like spend 10 to 15 minutes training your mind every day. And it's that preventative. It's hopefully before we get a problem. Not to say that you won't ever have a bigger, sometimes and that's okay if you do the training and then sometimes because life happens and sometimes we still do run into bigger problems. But I think it's that preventative care of training your mind every day, 10 to 15 minutes of these little mental challenges, as you're saying, is training to keep you more mentally resilient.
Yeah. And it goes back to what we were talking about before of like, if you can equate this to something that an athlete would resonate with, like I think it makes sense. And that's where train your mind like you're training your body came from. And that's then now the extension of our challenges is to, it is something every day. And even on a rest day, you're still doing things. And it's also the concept of you wouldn't show up to, Super Bowl without having played the season and trained the entire season to get there. Yeah. It's the same thing in terms of with your mind, right? It's that's when we get to these big meets and then our mind starts working against us and we don't know how to get out of it. And so that's what we're really putting a game plan together for athletes. You're arming athletes with a game plan that they don't have to think about. They don't have to put together, right? It's something that just like their physical and practice plan is done for them. And it's their responsibility to step in, step up and see how they can get it to work for them.
Yeah, love that. So can you share with our listeners how people can reach out to you or follow you on social?
Absolutely. So the website is performancereimagined.com. You can go and find all the information about the Inner Opponent Challenge. It kicks off at actually January 23rd, ready 1, 2, 3 of this month or of this year. And you can also follow me personally on Instagram at Mrs. Lauren Ammon or the organization at Performance_Reimagined_.
Amazing. Now, Lauren, I end every podcast with the same questions to my guests. Are you ready to play along?
Always.
If there's one food you could eat every single day for the rest of your life and never get sick of it, what would it be?
Pickles.
Oh, such a good answer. Pickles. What is your favorite sport to participate in?
Swimming.
Yeah. Seems obvious.
Mm-hmm.
How about as a spectator? Is there a favorite sport to be a fan of?
Football.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. And then last question. I know there's so many amazing female athletes, but if you could give a shout out to one for being a role model and inspiration, whether she's well known or just in your personal life, who would that be and why?
Katie Ledecky.
Yeah.
She just watching her from the outside world and just her accomplishments aside and what she's been able, but she just is just a good, wholesome human who is just brings so much not only to the sport of swimming, but just female athletes around the world.
Yeah. Amazing. I'm also quite impressed with her for multiple different reasons. So to Katie Ledecky and Lauren Ammon, thank you so much for this conversation. It was really fun and I hope our listeners got a lot out of it and will reach out to you if they need help to train their mind like they train their body.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation. I appreciate it.
I really hope you enjoyed that episode and thanks for listening. But before I let you go, I have free resources that you can have access to right away, right now, so that you can start fueling your body as a fierce, fit, and fueled female athlete. First, I have your Red S recovery race. If you've ever wondered if you might be struggling with Red S, curious to learn more, or know you have Red S and are looking to recover fast, then you can head to www.riseupnutritionrun.com/RedS and download the Red S Recovery Race. See how you place and figure out the next steps to recovery. Plus, while there, I have a few other great resources for you, including 3 nutrition secrets that every elite athlete swears by, and access to our private Facebook community, Female Athlete Nutrition. So again, to gain access to all of this, head to riseupnutritionrun.com/RedS. That's /REDS, and you can gain access and get the help you need fast. Too many girls and women and female athletes struggle with nutrition, but you don't have to any longer. Become fierce, fit, and fueled. Links in the show notes, and I'll see you next time.